last point on this issue. If we repeal the Affordable Care Act, we are going to provide $346 billion in tax breaks to the top 2%. Ted, in other ways, goes even further. He wants to repeal the estate tax, which applies to the top 0.2%, the very wealthiest people in this country, and give them collectively hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks. Ted, we are the wealthiest country in the world. And it's not a question of everybody driving a fancy car, but it is a question to making sure that every man, woman, and child in this country has health care as a right.
I want to bring it back to a subject.
Let me respond to that real quickly. I know this gentleman has a question.
As long as you're not going to talk about the estate tax.
What Bernie said real quickly, I want to respond to just briefly. Which, you know, it was interesting in the course of the campaign last year. I would encounter young people all over the country. There were a lot of young people who supported our campaign, a lot of young people who supported Bernie's. And I would talk with different people supporting Bernie. And I'd say to them, typically young people, I'd say, you know what, I agree with Bernie. And they'd sort of look at me, they'd be startled. They'd say, what are you talking about? I said, listen, Bernie talks about how Washington is corrupt, how both parties are corrupt, how both parties are in bed with big business and big money, and it is a corrupt system benefiting the special interest. I agree absolutely and entirely. And what I tell folks is where I disagree is in his solution. If the problem is government is corrupt, why on earth would you want more power in Washington? I want to take power out of Washington and empower the people. When it comes to taxes, what I want to see is a simple flat tax of 10% for everyone and abolish the IRS. That ends the power of the lobbyists. It ends the power of Washington. That's a solution that empowers the people.
One second, if I could respond. And in the midst of massive, unprecedented income and wealth inequality, Ted's plan, according to the Wall Street Journal, would give incredible tax breaks to the top 1%.
Okay, we'll do another town hall debate on tax reform.
Good.
Okay, we're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, a subject where there might be some agreement. The debate continues with Senators Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to the CNN debate on the future of Obamacare. Let's turn now to the rise in prescription drug costs. For that, I want to bring in Cole Gelrod. He comes from Denver, Colorado. He's a father of two whose daughter, Juniper, requires medication that would cost $900 a month without Medicaid. Cole?
Thank you. My 3-year-old daughter was born with an undiagnosed severe heart defect and required a heart transplant when she was only 7 months old. Unfortunately for us and families like ours, our employer-provided insurance does not cover the most vital of my daughter's life-saving prescriptions. This luckily hasn't been an unbearable financial burden for my family because of Obamacare and particularly the Medicaid expansion. Senator Cruz, regardless of what happens with health care reform, how do you plan to address the rising costs of prescription drugs? Additionally, how would you like to address a healthcare system where insurance companies can choose to not cover drugs that people like my daughter need to live?
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for the care you give your 3-year-old daughter. I know that is not easy. And the question you ask is one of the great challenges facing this country, as we've seen the cost of drugs increasing dramatically. One area Bernie and I talked about, we agree on, is allowing the importation of drugs into this country from other countries where they're cheaper. There's no reason why we should be subsidizing other countries across the globe. But another fundamental area is FDA reform, where the cost of getting a new drug approved are prohibitively expensive. I don't know if you've ever seen or folks have ever seen the movie Dallas Buyers Club. It's a wonderful movie with Matthew McConaughey about a gentleman in Texas who had AIDS and wanted to get drugs to care for it, and the FDA wouldn't allow it here, and he would travel to Mexico, he traveled to Japan, he traveled all over the world trying to get life-saving drugs. There is story after story